For Unit 1, Day 5 notes, this is over literal equations and formulas. So the main idea is that you are going to manipulate an equation to get a variable by itself. So manipulate means change, and variable is a letter. So we're going to change the equation to get a letter by itself. And in this case, we're going to get y by itself. So we want to move the term 3x to the other side. And how we do that? By the opposite sign, or the opposite inverse. So if this is a positive 3x, we're going to subtract 3x to both sides. But we can't actually subtract it from the 12 since they're not like terms. So we bring the y down, and you put your x term first, and then I put the plus 12 at the end. Remember that the 12 is a constant because it's just a number. And that's it, you're done. The y is by itself. So in B, the same idea. Want to get y by itself, so I'm going to subtract the 2x to the other side, and then we're just writing these next to each other, putting the x first. In letter C, in this case, you have a 4 times y. Well, the opposite inverse of multiplying would be dividing. So we're going to divide every term by 4. And this cancels that or makes that a 1. So 1y, which is just y. This becomes 2x, and this becomes positive 4. And as you can see, y is now by itself. In letter D, you have 2 steps. One, I want to move my x to the other side like I did in these 2 problems. So I'm going to add it. So I'd have 4y, then I'd have equals 8x minus 16. Now we have a 4 in front of the y, so there's multiplying there, 4 times y. And so I'm going to divide every term by 4. So my final answer would be y equals 2x minus 4. Okay. For the next part here, this one says solve each formula for the given variable. So here we want to solve this equation so that we have r by itself. Okay, so first thing is we want to identify our variable. So I've got an r. I look to see what's next to the r, and I have a times t. So the opposite of multiplying something would be dividing it. So to get the r by itself, I'm going to have to divide by that t. Those t's are going to cancel to make 1, so we would just have an r left. And that would be d divided by t. Now, you can leave your answer like this. I usually write it so your variable is first. So that's how I would normally write it. I would just change it around a little bit. So in B, very similar. It says here that we want to get the w by itself. So if I look there next to the w, I have an L, and that's being multiplied. So I'm going to divide by L, and I would have w equals a divided by L. Or you could write it this direction as well. But they mean the same thing. In C, we're solving for pi. Now, when you look at this one, we see that we have a 2 and an r. So it's 2 times pi times r. The opposite would be divide by the 2 and the r. So the 2's cancel, the r's cancel, and you're left with pi. And we have c over 2r. I'm going to rewrite that. So please know that either one of these is an acceptable answer. In letter D, we have to get the p by itself. So this is p times r times t. So I'm going to divide by rt. R's and t's cancel there. So I am left with p equals I over rt. Again, we can write that like this. For letter E and letter F, you can see here that you have a fraction. And as you know, in class, we have been clearing the fraction. So first, we need to get, or identify what we need to get by itself. So I'm going to have to get the b by itself. To do that, I clear a fraction. So I am multiplying by the denominator on this side and this side. This says 2 times a, so 2a. And here the 2's cancel. So we have 1bh. Well, the 1, I don't need the 1 in front of the variable. So I'm just going to write down bh. Again, I still got to get that b by itself. So this says b times h. Opposite of multiply is divide by the h. So I would have b equals 2a over h. One thing to note is that if you're given the variable as a capital, you keep it a capital. If it's a lowercase letter, keep it lowercase. Okay, letter F. We need to get the j by itself. So I am going to multiply by the 5. So 5m. 5's cancel here, and I have 4jk left. Now your goal is to get that j by itself, so I'm going to have to do the opposite and divide by 4k. So the k's cancel, the 4's cancel, and I'm left with j equals 5m over 4k. Okay. The last example, we need to, the equation 10x plus 5y equals 80, where x is the number of pizzas and y is the number of sandwiches. Solve the equation for y. Alright, so over here, I'm going to go ahead and write out the equation. I see that this is set up very similar to example 1D. So that's this one right here, example 1D. So the first thing I want to do is I want to subtract the 10x. So 5y equals negative 10x plus 80. Remember, they're not like terms, so you can't subtract them. Then divide by 5. And that would be 16. Okay. So solve the equation for y. So that's the answer for the first question. The second question says, how many sandwiches can you buy if you buy 3 pizzas? So up here it said x was pizzas, and sandwiches, y is the number of sandwiches. Okay, so if I know x is 3, I can plug 3 in there and find my y. Okay. So I'm going to use order of operations to simplify here. So that gets negative 6 plus 16 equals, 16 minus 6 is 10 sandwiches. And that is all for day 5.